Here's another big admission that I feel compelled to make. I, like countless of my colleagues, often expect you, our students, to intuitively practice critical thinking and mastery of the related skills. But we seldom ever provide you, our students, with sufficient tools to do this. You see, human beings are perceptual creatures. Put another way, human beings actually experience the world and the reality of the world only through their capacities of perception. Those most common capacities are seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, and smelling. Now this sounds familiar from your elementary school days, and we're all familiar with the five senses. But it is a critical matter. There are other modes of perception, such as intuition, which are more advanced than these commonly accepted five sense perceptual modes. And those more advanced perceptual modes are highly dependent on our abilities to make sense of our world through critical thinking and reasoning. Now, there are various strategies for honing and perfecting these perceptual skills. One tool or strategy that I found highly effective is the strategy of deconstruction. Now, simply defined and as employed within my courses, deconstruction is a method of critical analysis that emphasizes the internal workings of language and conceptual systems, the relational quality of meaning, and the assumptions implicit in forms of expression. That's a mouthful. Let's put it another more practical way. Deconstruction represents a strategy for determining whether statements, assertions, or arguments are valid, that is, acceptable as true, or invalid, not acceptable as true. First, what is truth? Well, I'm not prepared to provide you with the answer to a question that has troubled philosophers throughout time, thousands of years. You see, in order for truth to be defined properly, it would have to be a factually and logically correct statement. Ironically, and in other words, it would have to be true. So therein is the problem here. For the sake of our examination, let's simply agree that truth is anything that is factually and logically correct. How can we know that it is correct? Now, can we know absolutely that statements and assertions and arguments are really factual, logical, and correct? Perhaps not, but we can get as close as possible by examining the facts, examining the logical reasoning, and eliminating what I call inherent assumptions in these statements. First, let's clarify exactly what I mean by these terms. A statement is no more than a definite or a clear expression of something in speech or in writing. The key word here is definite, because most statements are presented under the assumption that they're either true, in most cases, or false. For example, here's a statement. The boy went to the movie last Sunday. The boy went to the movie last Sunday. Now, this is a statement, and most often few of us would pursue deconstruction of this statement, unless we suspect that that boy may have stolen our iPad on last Sunday. Then our ability to verify the statement that he was at the movie as true or false assumes more critical value. Likewise, an assertion is a statement of fact or belief. But unlike a statement, it is made with a demonstrated level of confidence and forcefulness. For example, animal cloning should be banned in all states. Now, oftentimes, assertions are no more than opinions backed up with absolutely no evidence or argument. Unfortunately, assertions may be easily accepted as factual or true unless properly challenged through deconstruction. Herein lies the tragedy of unquestioned assertions, and I'm certain that you can identify numerous examples, such as President Obama was not born in the United States, and others. Now, an argument, on the other hand, is an attempt to persuade someone of something by giving reasons for accepting a particular conclusion as evident of truth. For example, here's an argument. We must resist all effort to allow the government to censor entertainment. Freedom of speech and expressions are essential to a democratic form of government. As soon as we allow some censorship, it won't be long before censorship will be used to silence the opinions and critical comments of the government. The next thing we know, we'll have no more freedom than the Germans did under Hitler. Well, that's a mouthful. Notice the distinctions here between statements, assertions, and arguments. A statement is a simple expression, whereas an assertion is more forceful. Finally, an argument attempts to provide ample reasons why one should be convinced of its validity or truth. An argument attempts to persuade. Now, whether a statement, an assertion, or an argument, as human beings and intellectuals, it is our responsibility to validate or invalidate all, as opposed to simply assuming that these things are true or valid. So how do we employ deconstruction as a strategy for determining truth? The first step in deconstructing any statement, argument, or assertion is to evaluate the argument, statement, or assertion in light of whether its assumptions are valid or invalid. But we must first recognize those assumptions. We must first recognize all assumptions. And an assumption is no more than things that are accepted as true or as valid or as certain to happen without absolutely any proof. If we don't do this, we're never able to deconstruct the arguments in themselves. We either validate these assumptions, that is, we build proof to support them, or we invalidate the assumptions. We show that there is no proof to support them. Now, to the greatest extent possible, proof should be empirical. That is, proof should be based on observations, on experience, rather than on some theory or opinion. Then and only then can we draw conclusions about the statement, the argument, or the assertion. If the assumptions are invalid, then the argument is invalid. However, if the assumptions are valid, then the argument is valid. Now notice that I did not say that the argument is true, because I don't believe that one can ever determine that something is both really factually and logically correct. But we can get as close to truth as humanly possible through the use of deconstruction. Here's hoping that your deconstruction experiences will be meaningful, useful, important, and most of all, valuable. Okay, it's yours.